For today's sonic experiment, I have 4 relatively affordable audio interfaces in the studio, and in the context of recording bass direct, I want to see which one of these sounds best. Or maybe they all sound the same. Let's find out. So the 4 audio interfaces I have today are the SSL 2. Here I have the Focusrite Scarlett Solo. In the middle here we have the Mackie Onyx Producer 2-2. And on the bottom of this pile we have the Presonus Studio 24C. Let me describe the setup of today's experiment. First, we'll start with the source, or the instrument. Today I'm going to play a 1968 vintage Fender Jazz Bass. The reason why I chose this bass is because it's strung with roundwounds, it's relatively bright, but it's a very lively bass. So if we're trying to compare frequency response, overtones, and overall richness of the sound, this was the perfect bass to do it. Now, to eliminate any playing variability and to keep it fair for all 4 interfaces, I have pre-recorded a bass track into the looper function of my Line6 Pod Go. This way, we have the same output and the same recorded take that we will then feed through each interface. That will keep it fair for all 4. The first part of the experiment is we're going to take the amp out from the Line6, which is a high impedance signal. It was designed to go into guitar amplifiers. And we're going to feed it into the instrument input or the high D inputs for all 4 interfaces. The second part of the experiment, using the same recorded track, we're going to take the balanced output from the Line6, and then we're going to feed that into the mic preamp section of each interface. And then we'll compare the sonic differences, and we'll see whether or not there actually is a difference. As usual, to best appreciate the sonic differences, quality headphones or speakers are recommended. All right, first impressions. Overall, I think all four interfaces capture the bass relatively well. They, however, do not all sound the same. So let's talk about the high impedance instrument input first. Of the four, the Onyx, it seemed to have the least amount of bass and the least amount of body and beef to the tone. So I think of the four, it sounds the thinnest and the most narrow. On the other end, I think the SSL2 and the Presonus Studio 24C to be very similar in tonality. They're very, very close. I will, however, say the SSL2 has a little bit, and this is very, very subtle, but it has a little bit more sparkle to it. So overall, I think the recorded sounds are a little bit more exciting sonically on the SSL2, but that is very, very subtle. The Focusrite Scarlett Solo, on the other hand, I found, especially compared to the SSL2, sounded ever slightly more dull on the high end, so it lacked a little bit of the sparkle. And to my ears, it also sounds very subtly mid-scooped. Switching now to the second part of the experiment, and that is using the balanced output from the Line6 into the microphone preamp section. For all four of them, surprisingly, I found the mic preamp sounded a little wider, and especially with headphones. It just sounded a little more broad and a little bit bigger, and that was across the board. Interestingly, the same sonic findings I found with the high Z inputs were also true using the microphone preamp section. So again, the Mackie Onyx Producer 2-2 sounded the thinnest and the most narrow, with the least amount of body. The SSL2 and the Presonus, again, were very, very similar in tonality, with the SSL maybe having, again, that extra little bit of sparkle and excitement. And the Focusrite, again, to my ear, sounded a little more dull compared to the others, and was slightly mid-scooped. So those are my findings with these four relatively affordable USB-powered audio interfaces in the context of recording bass direct. I think in summary, all four sound pretty good, but if we're comparing these four, then for me, I think the two winners are the SSL2 and the Presonus. They both sound great, and they both sound very similar to each other. For today's experiment, these were the only four interfaces I had in the studio. It would be really interesting to add into the mix the new offerings from Audient and also Universal Audio. And then also compare these to higher end interfaces such as those from like RME or Apogee Symphony, where you're talking about spending, $1,000 plus for an audio interface. I think that would also make for an interesting experiment. But for today, these are the four. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and I hope you found it helpful. Until next time.